Hey you all, it's Diana at the Hardin County Extension Office, and we are back for our second month of cooking through the calendar. And so if you remember, we are doing our traditional calendar classes this year, where we are cooking the recipe that we have each month. This calendar is released by the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service and our Nutrition Education Program. And each month has a different recipe, main dishes, sides, all kinds of things. And so each month, right here on this Thursday, you'll be able to watch on the Hardin County Public Library Facebook page as we cook through the recipes in the calendar. So this month is Easy Peasy Mac and Cheesy. So kind of a cheesy title there, but a really good, simple, hearty dish that can be used as a side, can be used as a main course, can be beefed up. Lots of different ways that we can pair this dish, and a very kid-friendly recipe as well. So I'm going to tell you a couple of things before we started. You saw that the very first thing I had to do was to cook my pasta. It is a whole wheat pasta, so you may have noticed that it was a little bit darker brown than normal. And if you happen to read the recipe that was posted at the very beginning, or will be in the comments, or will be at the end, you may have noticed that it said shell or macaroni pasta, and mine is penne pasta. And that's okay, you can use whatever kind of pasta you want with this. That just happened to be the only option that my grocery store had in the whole wheat. And to me, it was more important that I had the whole wheat pasta than it was that I had the correct shape of pasta. So you can use whatever you want. You also could use the vegetable pasta if you wanted. Whatever works for you, but that whole wheat does give us a little bit more fiber, helps us feel fuller, makes it a more lasting meal. And so anytime we can get whole wheats in our diet, that's a better thing, or whole grains in our diet, excuse me, that's a better thing anyway. So I do have my pasta prepped. I cooked it according to package directions. I drained it, and I did keep some of the liquid, which the instructions tell you to do. The point of that is when we make our sauce here in just a minute, when you get to the end, if the sauce feels just a little too thick for you, you can use that pasta water to thin that sauce out. So we may not use that pasta water that we reserved at all, or we may use all of it. Just kind of depends on your personal preference, and that gives you a way to not have to use more water. You can just go ahead and use the water that you had. So pasta is here. And then I'll tell you the other ingredients that we have in this. And this is actually the first time I'm making this, and I have not had this, but I think it looks delicious and looks like something that I would definitely enjoy for lunch or even for a dinner with my family. Could have kids help really easily. So besides my pasta, we've got a can of tuna in water. You always want your tuna to be in water and not in oil. So make sure that you get it in water. We have got our non-fat evaporated milk. There is a difference between evaporated and condensed and all of that, and we want to make sure we're getting the non-fat option just because we don't need that extra fat. I have a can of peas. I did grab the no sodium peas. You can grab low sodium. If your grocery store doesn't have that as an option, just rinse them before you use them, and that'll get a little bit of that sodium off. We have 8 ounces of shredded cheese. You can use pre-packaged shredded cheese, or you can get a block and shred your own. There are some health benefits to shredding your own. It just depends on what works for you. If you're in a time crunch, it's perfectly okay to use the convenience of the pre-packaged shredded cheese. That's why we kind of take fat a little bit from every area, and we can do what we can to reduce some of that fat, reduce some of these calories, things like that. And then the spices that we're gonna have, we have salt, pepper, garlic powder, and then celery seed. My grocery store didn't have celery seed, so I grabbed celery salt, which if you look on the label, or if you're familiar with it, celery salt is just celery seed and salt mixed together. I think the celery seed is actually ground. But because of that, since I only had an option for celery salt, I omitted the salt from the recipe. That way since I was already getting it in the celery salt instead of celery seed, I didn't feel like we needed any extra. So 6 total ingredients, besides our pot that we cooked our pasta in, which really, if you had a good pot or good large skillet, you could do this all in one dish. But at most, we're gonna have 2 pots and our colander. And then if it was me at home, I wouldn't have this all in pretty clear bowls. I would just dump it straight from the can once I drained, things like that. And so this is a very simple, very quick cleanup dish, and very easy to make. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just turn my burner on here, because we're gonna wanna heat up our sauce. And so our sauce really just consists of that evaporated milk, the cheese, and then our spices mixed together. And then once the sauce gets where we want it to be, we'll add in our tuna, our peas, and our pasta, and our dish is done. So really can't get much more simple than this. We don't want our evaporated milk to boil. We just want it to heat. And so I'm gonna put this, I can already feel the heat coming off this. I'm gonna turn it down even more, because again, we don't want to scorch our milk. We just wanna heat it. And so I'm gonna play with this just a little bit. There we go. Kind of get it right where I want it. Dump that evaporated milk, again, non-fat, out. And it's a 12-ounce can. And then we're gonna add our cheese once that gets a little bit heated up. So if you have any budding chefs in your house, this would be a really great dish for them to start with, just because it is so simple. Dump it all in one pot. It's not a lot of chopping or anything like that, so it's a lot of kid-safe activities that you can do. So I'm gonna put my shredded cheese kind of all around in my pan. I am using a really large pan, which means that my milk is pretty thin in there, and so it's gonna heat up more quickly than if I were using a short pan and it was more dense. And so I'm gonna go ahead and add my cheese, and I'm just gonna take my spoon and kind of stir this, because again, I don't want to scorch that milk. And so as we let this kind of come together and melt, you'll see really just how simple this dish is. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the tuna that we're putting in this. So we are supposed to have fish around 3 times a week, and the average person does not get near that amount. And so this is a really easy way to add some of those omega-3s into just an everyday side dish, right? Most of us love macaroni and cheese. A lot of households serve it frequently. And so adding in those, or that can of tuna, is just a really easy way to add in some extra health benefits. You can use a different fish if that's what you have or that's what you prefer. That is totally up to you. I'm gonna turn this up just a little bit now that I've got all my cheese in here. But tuna is just very low cost, and it traditionally is one of the fish varieties that is more well known and people are familiar with, and maybe more likely to try something with tuna in it. If you are just not a tuna fan at all, there's all kinds of different fish options that you can add into this dish as well. If you don't want to do fish, you could do chicken just as easily. You could omit it altogether if you wanted, but it is a really good way to get some extra protein if you're going to use the tuna, omega-3s, things like that. And this happens to be Heart Health Month. And so that's one thing we want to, kind of the goal of this calendar is to not only give you recipes that are inexpensive and budget friendly and don't use a ton of crazy ingredients or anything like that, but is to give you healthier options as well. And so they tend to take traditional foods that we enjoy and maybe add in a few more vegetables or add in some more fruit, cut the fat, cut the salt, things like that. In this one, again, we're taking a traditional meal of macaroni and cheese, something that a lot of people like. I can't say everybody because I happen to be married to someone who is not going to eat macaroni and cheese. But it's probably my daughter's favorite meal. And so it does get served in our house. And so this is just a different take on that dish that's a little bit healthier. And so I'm all for the idea of this, especially during Heart Health Month. And so you'll see I'm just continually stirring this so that my cheese keeps mixing. And then once it's melted, the cheese, and it's kind of thickened up to what looks like a good creamy sauce, you can kind of see there. I'm gonna go ahead and add in my garlic powder. Hopefully you have the option to have celery seed, but if not, celery salt, and then pepper. And then if you had celery seed, you would have had salt in that mixture as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that in. You can automatically smell what that does. If your grocery store doesn't have celery seed or celery salt, you could try dill as an option as well, if you preferred. And then, like I said, the other one is just garlic powder, which is pretty common that we see a lot. So for the most part, that shouldn't be difficult to find. So you can kind of see, I hope, this just looks like a really hearty, thick sauce. Creamy, and I am a huge fan of creamy dishes. This one's really simple. This is gonna be a really short video this month, just because this is such an easy dish. And so now that I've got this, I'm gonna add in my peas. You could throw in a different vegetable if you wanted, either in addition to the peas or in place of the peas. Whatever you thought sounded good could be used. I happen to love peas with macaroni and cheese. I've always thought that it was a good combination. I know some people who put broccoli in their macaroni and cheese, because we all know that broccoli is usually better with cheese on it, and so that's a good way to get some broccoli in your diet as well. I am going to add in my tuna, all in this one pot, to make it as easy as possible on you for cleanup. If you wanted more tuna, go for it. That's an easy, inexpensive way to bulk this up even more if you're serving a larger family. I think this one says feeds 6, if I remember it. Yeah, it makes 6 servings that are a cup each. And so that's a good amount for a main dish. You could serve it with a salad, carrots, any kind of vegetable, things like that. You could have some whole wheat toast with this as well. One of my favorite dishes from school whenever I was little was a tuna melt. And it was literally just toast and tuna and cheese, and I thought it was like the fanciest, best lunch day at school. And so for me, anytime I have tuna, especially if there's cheese somewhere mixed in, I always want toast. So that may sound weird to you, but that's a kind of a childhood thing for me. And then the only thing I'm gonna do here is toss in my noodles, which I did have to prep this morning. So they've sat for just a little bit, which is okay, because they are getting ready to get covered in this creamy, cheesy sauce. And then you're gonna be able to just serve straight from this pan if you prefer, which makes dinner time even easier. I am curious though, I know sometimes it's a really big debate on family dinner. Do you serve from the oven or the space where you prepared the meal? Or does everything go in a bowl to the table? Or so you could even take it on this and have a trivet, whatever it is. But how do you serve your family dinners? So in my house, growing up, unless it was a special occasion, we served ourselves. We made our plates, or mom made our plates, but she made it from where she prepared it. So the countertop and the stove. And then our plates went to the table. We always ate at the table, but the foods didn't traditionally make it to the table in bowls, unless, like I said, it was a special occasion. But I know some people that every single meal, every food that was offered was in a separate bowl in the table, and you made your plate there at the table. And so I never really realized that that was a debate, a thing, until I did my thesis for college, when that was one of the questions that I asked. I actually did my thesis on family dinner, and one of the questions I asked was, how did you serve your food? Was it, you know, kind of buffet style on the serving space or the preparation space, or did it all go to the table? And it was really interesting to see that that kind of was a generational thing. And so our older generations tended to put everything in bowls at the table, and you served yourself at the table. And as we got younger in those generations, we began to serve from the preparation space instead. And so that may have been something that was just a time saver. It may have been a dish saver, which is also obviously a time saver as well. But it was really interesting to see that the older generation did not enjoy whenever they had to prepare their meals somewhere other than the table. But for the younger generations, it was totally normal to prepare your food and then go sit at the table and eat it. And so, again, just something interesting, and I'm curious on how your family did it. And I'm curious too, did you grow up with that, or are you different than the way that you grew up? So maybe did your household as a child do it one way, and now you as an adult do it differently? So just a fun question to toss in there. So again, this is done. I've really just stirred just while I'm talking. It hasn't actually needed that much mixing. If I wanted to, like I said, I could have added in this extra pasta sauce or pasta water if I thought my sauce was too thick. I like that creamy thickness, so I did not use it, but I easily could have if I wanted to. So that was an option as well. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Use the comment box. That's the point of doing these videos. If you would like a copy of this recipe, it's going to be posted in the comments, as well as a link to be able to print one off yourself if the picture is a little bit difficult. Plus, it's at the beginning of this video and at the end, and so you could screenshot as well if you didn't want to have to go searching through the comments. If you have questions, please ask. Otherwise, I will see you all in March. Thanks.